My name is Shweta Daga. I am in Bangalore, India, and I've been working for the last couple of years on climate justice at different intersections with economic, social, and gender justice as well. I kind of consider myself a storyteller and a facilitator. And I've worked across multiple platforms. So anything you can think of, from film to TV, theater, journalism, I've sort of done it all. And yeah, I like community organizing. So I'm also a facilitator. I have always felt in my heart, I have been a resistor for the longest time. And I will always be my heart will always be in that R, because I know what it feels like to not have a voice. I know what it feels like to have to fight for something that you really believe in, or fight to be seen. I get that. And I never had the tools or the language to really understand or communicate that to somebody. And what I really loved about the 4Rs was that it really helped me see that it wasn't just resisting, but the reforming, the recreating, and the reimagining are all part of a system that can go together, and the fifth R that Jody added recently that I love is called Revolutionary Joy, which I'm sure you also heard about, Bev. And it just felt so right, and I have used it across platforms with different communities, with different friends, with different facilitators, with different activists, and really have used it as a platform, as a starting off point to have conversations around, like, what do we really want to see in this world? Like, what do we want to, how do we want to make things different? How do we want to create change? And I know that sounds a little theoretical, but because I also have family and friends who occupy all of the 4Rs, it helps so much to have conversations that are now authentic and like real, but also like genuine and curious. And even if there's friction, it comes from a really good place, as opposed to like, you're not doing this right, and you're not doing enough, and you're not doing enough. But it's been so helpful for me to even have that, and to really see where other people are coming from. Someone who is a reformer is someone who works within the system, and they really try to work within the system and change it from the inside out. So for me, someone who resists is someone who is challenging the system, who questions the system, who questions the rules that are in place, and sort of goes out of their way and says, but why is it like this? And like, how can we make it better? Someone who's a recreator looks at something and figures out another way it could be utilized. So for me, upcycling is a big upcyclers are huge recreators. They literally take trash and they turn it into treasure. And a reimaginer is someone who like completely decides that I am gonna, like, through art, through music, through imagination, is like through walking out of the current system. They've like walked out of the system. That's someone who reimagines. That's someone who's like, we can totally do this differently. But I think what's so beautiful about all of the R's is that we actually really do need each other, and we have to work with each other. I think that is the best part for me. And what I've realized is I actually work in all 4Rs now. I belong to all of them. I very much am rooted and identify with being Indian and living in India and being here. But I do have a lot of influence that came from the US. I went to school in the States and everything. And so the last couple of years for me, both of these countries have been reforming, resisting, recreating, reimagining, with Dalit Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, the CAA protests that happened in India, the farmers' protests that are happening in India, the women's movement protests that are happening in the US. And what I saw in each of these movements that were so powerful in different moments, where it was this idea of revolutionary joy. People were singing and dancing on the streets. People were coming together and they were hugging and they were standing in solidarity. And there was this sense of community that was so important. I've gone to all of these protests, and every time I go, there's always something about standing together. And to me, that's revolutionary joy. Like, I don't think there can be movements without music, without love, without laughter. It's not going to work. And I mean, a couple of months ago, I don't know how many people were following this, but in India, hundreds of thousands of farmers decided that they were going to protest. There were these very terrible policy changes that were coming into our law that were going to really impact our farmers. And they literally, peaceful protest, sat and blocked a huge highway, like a huge, basically like a road in Delhi. But the way that they did it was, they opened up, like there was food for everybody. There's places to bathe for everybody. There were, singing and dancing were happening on these roads. And it was one of the most amazing things to see. Like, our farmers who are going through so much with the climate crisis, with the kind of debt that they're in, they decided that they were going to stand up for themselves, but they didn't use weapons. They didn't use military might. They literally sat there and they were like, we will feed you. Come and meet us. Come and hear our stories. Come and be with us. And that to me is revolutionary joy. I actually think that there's this really beautiful possibility I see is, for me, I am all about solidarity. I don't believe in sort of empathy anymore. I'm sorry to say this might be controversial, and I'm happy to talk to everybody about why, but for me, I'm about solidarity. I'm there about standing next to my brother or sister who's going through something, and that's what it is for me. I just, showing up is half the battle. And I feel like we have a lot to learn from each other just by showing up for each other. But I also think that there is amazing learnings that can happen. And there's this beautiful friction that could happen between the 4 Rs that makes us stretch, pull, like bring different parts of us alive in different ways. I mean, I know that I have learned a lot from reformers. I never thought that would be possible. That was probably my biggest friction with the R's. If I had to be like, who would you have friction with, it would always be a reformer. And it took me some time to realize how much they're doing. It really did. But now I see them for who they are and like what they're doing. And I think it's something that maybe I couldn't do as much as they, but I really respect them for it. And I don't think it would have happened if I didn't have this framework to offer me a lens into why they're important and like how their work helps support my work. And they stand in solidarity with me, even if I don't like, even if we don't see eye to eye on everything. And I think that's really cool. That's really cool. And it kind of, I think, bridges the second question, is like where we challenge each other, and I do think that space for challenge, that space for friction is needed. And it's if we can use the framework, if we can use that and insert that revolutionary joy, I think that even more beautiful things will come out of it, because a little bit of friction moves things forward. So I think that what I have seen happen over the last couple of years, probably 5 to 7 years, has been polarizing of people, polarizing of communities. And for me, what that means is that I'm not able to hear anybody else. I just want to hear what I want to hear. I want to be around people who share my thoughts and my opinions. And unfortunately, that's gotten us nowhere. And it's sad. And so the reason that I think that maybe some friction can move us forward is that if I'm able to have hard conversations with people who I might not agree with all the time, but who provide me perspective, insights, opinions that could be valuable and could help me understand. For me, why I feel like solidarity to me is more important, or that I resonate more with solidarity as opposed to empathy, is because I don't want anyone feeling, I mean, I guess sometimes to me, empathy translates into like feeling bad for something and then being paralyzed by that. Like, oh, I feel bad that the climate change is happening, but I don't know what to do. Like, I'm frozen. And it kind of sometimes causes that freeze, or like that, and or people feeling bad about it. I'm like, I don't want you to, I appreciate that. And there are things that you can do. And showing up is half the battle. And, just learning it. And so for me, I resonate with solidarity. Like, that's for me what it is. One project that I've been working on for the last year and a half is called the Gigaton Challenge. And it's kind of a global movement, grassroots movement. And the reason it's called a gigaton is a billion, basically. It means a billion. And according to the IPCC and all of our scientific data, it's that we have to reduce 10 gigatons of CO2e in the next 10 years, and actually even less. And so the reason it's called this is because the goal, the crazy ambition, is that we work together to reduce 1 billion tons of CO2e, because that's what it's going to take to make sure that we don't get over 1.5 degrees of warming. So the way that we're doing this, and the way that all 4 R's are used, is we're actually trying to get teams all over the world to participate. And what you do is you sign up for a 2-week sprint. So it's a course. So there's this whole thing, when we're talking, when people are like, oh, the climate crisis is so big, what can I do? What difference can I make? And I'm like, do this, sign up for 2 weeks, take a course, we put you on a team, or you join together with a team if you want, and you literally, we help you figure out a prototype to implement in your own city, in wherever you stay. And even if you don't stay in that city, you can still participate, you can still help. And what I really love about it is it's one big reimagination. Like, Gigaton to me represents reimagination, because it's like, we can't wait anymore for governments to do something about it, or for corporates to stop. It's just not going to happen. But at the same time, we're not talking about changing light bulbs. We don't want to greenwash. What we're trying to do is, especially for us living in the global South, like, I really can't wait for the West to take leadership on this, because the people who are going to be the most affected are us. We are going to be the ones. And so you recreate systems, right? You take waste that's going into like landfills, and you divert it. You create compost. You upcycle, right? And you create gardens, community gardens. For me, it's a form of resistance. So I am not going to participate. I'm not going to wait for someone to tell me something. I'm like, no, I'm doing it myself. It's a form of resistance for me. But in order to do this, I need reformers. I need to work across like strange bedfellows. So right now in Bangalore, we actually have a team that's working. And what we're doing is we have worked with the local government. And it's not just, so the way that in the US, there are 2 primary parties. In India, that's also the way that we work. And there are 2 primary parties. And what I have been able to do, what our team has been able to do, is partner with both. We are working with reformers, so with local government, and we are implementing a diversion of wet waste, garden waste, coconut waste, and we're creating a community composting system and a community garden. And what we want to do is we want to give away all that produce to vulnerable members of our community, people who are going to be the most impacted by the climate crisis. And that's equity. At the heart of the Gigaton, for me, it's equity. I'm not a technocrat. I'm not going to come in and be like, oh, this is going to suck the CO2e out of the air. No, I want to work with communities that are going to be the most affected and make things better for them.